those of you who have been to Polestar before may remember that it's our tradition a little bit, based on Yogananda's recommendation, that we start our meetings with an amusing story. So this is something he recommended every day, listen to an amusing story. So it's kind of a great idea. Keeps things light. Remember not to take anything too seriously. So I thought I had a volunteer for an amusing story, but turns out I have to do it. So next week, if I could get a volunteer, I would much appreciate it. But we have a lot of amusing stories from the lava coming, and this is a particularly memorable one. So it was a bit of a slow start on the eruption. Lots of earthquakes and cracks appearing, and then slowly smoke would come out of the cracks, and then before you knew it, lava was erupting out of the cracks. And we hit a point where we were having like 3 or 4 earthquakes a night that would really shake the house. And you have to imagine that you're sleeping in your bed and you've got a gas mask on your end table, and you're sort of prepared to run up. And one of the work details was that to go out and check the cracks, because there were cracks that appeared in our highway out here. So we had a work detail that somebody at midnight and somebody at 4 a.m. would check the cracks just to make sure we weren't going to fall into a fissure or something. So it was kind of ridiculous. But anyway, we eventually got evacuated, and we, very dramatic fashion, 5 police cars rolled in. They said, "You need to get out now." We were ready. We knew it was coming. So we all jump in the vehicles, we roll out the land, and we're rolling out, and the lava is literally a couple hundred yards from covering our driveway and making escape impossible, So it was very dramatic. The next morning, of course, we wanted to come back. And this became a theme for the next 4 days, is revisiting where we were. Hello, Hunter, nice to see you. And of course, they've got it all cordoned off, and National Guard is here by now. And so you can't just go back the normal routes, but we had a way to come that was the back way through a 4-wheel drive road that could get us to our property. And so we loaded up, a handful of us, and we heard that morning on the news that there was a new fissure was opening in our area. And so we sort of had this in our minds. So we came the back way. We pulled up on what's called Noni Farm Road, which was sort of our driveway. We went and visited the lava, which at this point was about 15 or 20 foot tall edge of lava. It's the kind they call lava. So it's not like a fluid river. It's a certain type of lava that's more like a bundle of rocks that are just overheated, glowing in the cracks and rolling down the road. And so this was covering the end of our driveway. And but then we saw that our neighbor's house looked like it was burning. So we hiked up this little hill over to look at our neighbor's house. And sure enough, there was this very strange, I still don't know what this meant, but there was this line of smoke trails in a perfect line leading right up to his house. And his foundation was burning right where a propane tank was. So for a moment, we considered going and moving the propane tank, but that didn't last very long. So we're sort of creeping along, about 4 or 5 of us. My sister Kathy was there, was a real trooper too, but we sort of crept along, and we're like, all sketched out, not sure we should be there at all. And all of a sudden, boom, like the loudest explosion you have ever heard in your life. And Rich, who is normally pretty mild-mannered, yells, "It's a fissure!" So we're all now thinking we're going to fall into a crack in the earth. And I never moved so fast in my life. I think I jumped about 10 feet in the first step. And Rich, who is, I don't think I ever heard him curse before this. He's like cursing a blue streak, So anyway, we got out of there. we came back to our property, which is adjoining, which is only, several hundred yards away. And I went up onto our little walkway that went up to our temple. There's a lanai there. And I sat there and I watched my neighbor's house burn down, And actually, I sent the picture to Abram, who posted it on Reddit and got like 40,000 hits. But anyway, then I talked to my neighbor. I said, "Do you want this footage?" I didn't want to assume he did, but in fact, he did want it, and he needed it for his insurance, which worked out well for him. But anyway, that's our amusing story of the day. The next several days, we did the same thing with similar results. Just very sketchy situations, but getting back to our property, it was very dramatic. So if you have an amusing story to tell, please bring it next week so I don't have to tell it. And believe me, we have a low bar for amusement. So it doesn't have to be that amusing. Just something to say hello with and get a smile out of everyone while we're loading into the Zoom call. All right, so our topic today is human relations. And we had a friend of the family who kind of became aware of what was going on at Polestar here. We living here with 25 people in kind of a lot of shared facilities, a lot of mutual involvement with each other's lives, sharing a kitchen largely, and et cetera. And her comment to me was, "How is that not drama 24/7?" And it was a very telling comment and a very good question. And so my ideas for the next few minutes are to try to answer that question. How is it not drama 24/7? We're all aware of the difficulties of human relations and how tough things can get. And as Americans, we've gotten used to sort of building a moat around our lives so that we can manage our relations to the maximum extent. But I think there is an art and a science to trying to get the most out of our friendships, our connections with each other. And when we reach that level of divine friendship with each other, we find something very valuable, very powerful, very uplifting for ourselves and for others. So the first part of this is, in creating a community, you start with the ideals, with the values, with the mission, with the goals, with the vision, and a really good place to start, rather than starting with legalese and conflict resolution. You start with drawing those who resonate with what you're doing. If you can find people who value similar things, you have a much greater chance at success in building a community. So in our first two meetings, we talked a lot about mission and vision, and I'm going to talk a little more about them here in this context. To develop pure and unconditional love between husband and wife, parent and child, friend and friend, self and all, is the lesson we have come on earth to learn. What a way to place the reality we find ourselves in. And for a certain way of being, just an important thing to ponder and to consider. If it basically says to me that we each take responsibility for our consciousness, for our attitude, for cultivating that connection with each other. In contrast, you can, of course, spend your life trying to get other people to behave in certain ways that are to your liking, but what if instead we were all working to cultivate unconditional love for each other? What a concept. So of course, none of us will live up to that, maybe in this lifetime, but having that orientation that this is important, or that that is a concept that resonates, is a real important thing, I think, for people in intentional community. And then Yogananda, in his wonderful way. He takes things sort of from the sublime to the very practical. In other words, unselfishness. What a simple way to name the reality. You can have the best system of governance, and if you have a bunch of selfish people running it, you will have a very unsatisfactory result. Whereas people who are essentially unselfish can make just about anything work. And this is just the reality of it. So in trying to reach for positive, good, creative, deep connections with each other, it's important to start with the focus in the right place, which is not necessarily to get all the bylaws in order, which is also needed, of course. You've got to create a system of governance that reflects the sensibilities of the group you're working with. But if you understand this part of it first, you just have a way, way better chance at reaching a measure of harmony and connection. And so that's kind of the main point I wanted to make in this class, is that in a spiritual community, the individual is required to take responsibility for themselves, for their consciousness, for their reality, for where they live in their heart, in their mind, in their spirit. And this is just a step one for being in community in a way that is healthy for everyone. And so then I wanted to share, because we did learn a lot at Polestar, and this is not, we've seen it all at Polestar. You can imagine all the years we've lived in close quarters, and so we don't have stars in our eyes about what's possible or probable in human relations, or what can happen. We've seen the gamut of things, and the reality is, though, when my friend said, "How is it not drama 24/7?" It wasn't. It was, of course, we had drama and maybe even a fair share of it, but the overpowering experience was something much deeper, much more profound, much more rich than just the egoic personal drama that people can tend to get into. So we sort of developed over time a strategy of 4 things we knew we could do on an ongoing basis that would keep the human relations in good repair. And I'm going to share those 4 things quickly. The first one is that we regularly shared sacred space together. So this is just a real way to recharge a group. And in our case, of course, we had our daily meditation practice as the obvious way to do that. By meditating together daily, we were in silence together, we shared music and chanting and prayers, and we were in that space of silence together. And it's a whole different octave of human relations to be in silence with others. And we also used to do silent retreats, and just to get to that place of feeling and appreciating and understanding another, not just through words, but through their energy, their vibration, their presence. And you can really feel that in a period of silence. So meditation works really well for that. There's plenty of other ways you can attain that place, but the point is, you get to that place of transcendence where you're not just in your egoic relating on a surface level. You feel the depth of connection. You feel the energy and the meaning of your relationships, not just the surface level. I'm often struck by, you go to funerals, often, and you will find that what's real about the connection is finally apparent. people see the spirit of someone when their body has disappeared, and they remember the beauty. They remember the power of the connection, and it's just very obvious at that point. We don't have to wait till we die to do that necessarily. That is possible in our own relationships and in our friendships. So the sacred space sharing really brings that out. I'll finish that particular topic with another Yogananda quote, which Veena will not bring up because I didn't write it down, but it's a great quote. I think of it often. Group meditation is the oil that keeps the machinery of human relations running smoothly. And boy, did we find that to be true. I've often said that attendance at morning practice was inversely proportional to drama in the common room, and it was pretty much the truth in our experience. Okay, so that's the first one, sharing sacred space. The second one is creative service. There's a type of bonding that happens with people when they are elbow to elbow in the trenches, so to speak, working hard, whether it's building or gardening or some creative work, any kind of service that is bonding in a way that nothing else is. So this is something we very much focused on, especially when you get out and just volunteer, which we did a lot at Polestar. We made it a point to get around the larger community, try to connect with other nonprofits who are doing work we appreciate. Just go for the day and participate. And in a lifetime of work parties that I participated in, I have to say those are definitely among the greatest days of my life. No question about it. The most joy, the most energy, the most connection, the most feeling of friendship, and things that I remember and cherish that I shared with my friends. So very, very connecting activity is to find that way to serve creatively together. And then the third one is food. Breaking bread together, eating, sharing meals, sharing food. And I think we were particularly good at this at Polestar. But we also had a lot of people coming in from all over the world who like to cook. And so we had, people sharing their favorite meals. We had a lot of very, very memorable times sharing food together. And it's just one of those things that brings the sort of human comfort level to your relationships is sharing food. And then the last one was play. And we adults get a little hard boiled over time, and we forget how important play is. And you may have heard that quote: "We do not stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing." And I think there is a lot of truth to that. And particularly, if you have the other three, you'll have a great community. You throw in the play, and it really becomes a whole nother level. Just to be like children again, to laugh, to be silly, in whatever way that makes sense. We're big on sports. We do a lot of sports, but we used to have contra dances every so often. Just whatever it is, it just lets you be a child again and in others' company. Being in play with others breaks down more boundaries between people than you can possibly imagine. And another thing that really contributes to the health and well-being of a community. Okay, so those are the main things I wanted to share about that. Then I wanted to just talk a little bit about governance and structure, and et cetera. And I'll start by saying that Polestar is a 501c3, a nonprofit corporation, and we have a board of 5 people, and we're designed by our bylaws to have a board up to 12 people. My vision for the board in this community is that we get a pool of people, several dozen if possible, and more if possible. And basically, the role of that group is to rotate in and out of serving on the board. And so basically, by doing that, you spread it out. You get more voices, you get more input, you get more people involved. And then you also, if those several dozen people can really connect with the vision and understand the vision and want to carry the vision, you spread out the responsibility for carrying that forward. So it's not dependent on a handful of people who would be doing it, and when they're gone, it's gone. So my belief is that would help to sustain it into the future over the generations. No doubt it will evolve, but I think you could instill the core values in a larger group of people and get people in the habit of cycling in and cycling out, and letting people sit in that seat of making decisions, and then sit in the other seat of dealing with the board that is making decisions. So the real goal is cooperation, and so that's really the ideal of self-governance, is to figure out how we can cooperate. As a starting point, everyone needs to be heard. And this is one of the beauties of not too large a community. That is not unrealistic. You should be able to have every voice that wants to be heard to be heard. And I know for myself, because I serve in various capacities and various ways, and as long as somebody will hear my point, I don't care if they make a different decision. If I feel like they got it, I'm cool. It's all right. You now know more things than I do, but I got to tell you this point because this is what occurs to me. And then you can let it go. And of course, I've been in leadership positions, so I know what a thankless job it can be. So I give most leaders an easy pass on that level. But the point is to try to, again, have this cultural reality of cooperation with each other. And I don't think it's easy to attain. I mean, just looking around at our communities and our society, I think it's something we all have to work on. And I should mention that all of this is very much a work in progress. Part of the goal of this community is to invite a lot more people in who may have a lot to offer this whole process. And so I'm telling you what we've got so far, which is a 501c3 and a 5-person board. And we have, in the overall scheme of this development project, there will be several other entities. One will likely be a holding company that secures the land and provides protection for the nonprofit and other investors. And, there's a whole, thing to talk about there. I won't go into that detail. But one other thing I will mention now is about what we see as the HOA, or homeowners association. So as I've said in previous calls, it's kind of the strategy of the project is, through the course of this development project, endow and empower the nonprofit to fulfill its mission within the common areas of the development, which would be the meditation temple, the common room and dining hall, the parks, and the learning spaces and the gathering spaces, that sort of thing. So that said, there will also be a group of homeowners who are living together, and which, whoever comes will be one of those. So this is a fairly well tried model, and I don't know with how much success, probably mixed success like most things, but there's probably things we can learn from what people have done. There's probably things we want to do differently. But the main point is that these principles of cooperation, of these values are in place, and that we try to get the organizational structures to reflect those principles. I think that's enough for now. And what I'd like to do next is break into small groups. Did anybody have anything to share that would really sort of add to this conversation of human relations and governance and cooperation, et cetera? Any thoughts or insights that came out that someone be willing to share?
Yeah, I would like to. Can you hear me?
Yes, fine, thank you.
Okay, this is speaking on behalf of Tamara. Tamara, that was wonderful what you said about cooperation and selfless service, but she also said that she also valued about speaking your voice when you needed to, and that was heard and letting go, so that's really important, not only to be seen and heard, but to just to put it out there, and the spirit of community, and let that happen. So I just thought that was powerful and wanted to share that for the group.
Thank you very much for mentioning that. And we always talk about the wisdom of the tribe. You get all the perspectives, and until you do, you're missing something. So I think it's a really good exercise in decision making to hear everything, and because usually there's a lot of times it comes from unusual places. You have to be open and willing to go there. So thanks for bringing that forward. That's great. Anyone else?
Yes, I'd like to make a comment.
Thank you.
Regarding this decision-making process, have you looked at any of the co-housing models where there's a consensus governance in terms of the HOA being 100% participants of the property owners, and turning that process into consensus? It allows everyone to be heard, and also everyone to agree at some point, even if you break into committees to resolve the differences.
Thank you, John, for bringing that up. And I am aware and have been part of various organizations. I remember many years ago, like the food co-op we were part of was consensus oriented. And so I am familiar with the process. It hasn't really been that literal for us that we really haven't done much voting, to be honest. Now, we, with more people and a undertaking like this, we will need more formality. I think my own feeling about that is, if you hold out for complete consensus, you can end up being tyrannized by someone who just can't let go. And so I think more in terms of a super majority or a strong majority, in terms of being more efficient and more practical. That's not to say, though, that to forget that everyone needs to be heard and needs to have their opinion valued. I'll mention one other thing on this topic, which I was interested to find out that in many native cultures, they have what they call situational leadership. So the person who's the best gardener leads the garden. The person who's the best hunter leads the hunters. The person who's the best, and to be honest, that's been my experience with community. You rally around those who have those abilities, and it's very organic, but it has worked well in my experience. Thank you. Anyone else?
I could say something.
Sure, thank you.
In our group, I felt very strongly that Polestar has provided a real joy level from its meditation and working together practice. And that resonated with me because that's why, as a Fort Collins resident, I would be very interested.
Awesome.
But
Thank you.
that keep alive. Yeah.
Amen. That is the main thing right there. Yeah, keep the main thing the main thing. And actually, I was on a call. We have with another Fort Collinser. So really happy to see some locals joining the group here. Yeah.
Yes. Hi, Michael. Dennis here.
Nice to see you.
So in terms of the broad brushstroke on things, then would the governance then ultimately be for the homeowners association be going under the governance then of the nonprofit, the Polestar, or would the holding company itself come up with kind of the bylaws or whatever you might have to call them of the homeowners association, or how does that process turn into whatever the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence or whatever we're constructing here turns into? Yeah.
No, it's a great question. Thank you. And I've learned that the way developers do it is if they have an HOA in their development, there's when a certain percentage of the lots, they come with probably a boilerplate plan of how the HOA works. And then when a certain percentage of the lots, maybe, I don't know, 70%, 80%, I don't know what it is, gets sold, it gets handed over. So they're no longer in charge at a certain point. In our case, I think preparing those documents is probably going to be a process of getting a handful of us who have some, ability in this arena and getting them to take a crack at it, looking at boilerplates, looking at the co-housing agreements that we can find and taking a shot at it. And then everybody who's involved getting the chance to feedback on it. So I think I see it as an process that would take, some many months to really hammer out. And whether the nonprofit is sort of how separate the two are remains to be seen. I think you could possibly have the nonprofit and its vision just holding that, and then you could have a positive counter, sort of decision-making body that was, responsible for a different realm of life. And so I obviously don't have it all thought through, but I know there's solutions there, and we have very good legal counsel now. Thank God, we found some good people to work with, and so this will not be impossible to attain. Anyone else?
I would like to share.
Thanks, Bailey.
So one of your questions to respond to in the group was, what would you gain by being in community? And for me, it would be deepening my spiritual practice, that there will be other people that love to meditate and share in that sacred space. And my husband, Dennis, and I can be more in the fourth ashram of life and not caring so much for the physical that we have for the past 38 years with our farm. And there will be many hands make light work.
Thank you. I love it. And I'd say you guys have earned that. And it really speaks to getting a lot of younger people involved, which has always been a theme for Polestar, having people, supporting young people and helping them to get involved in their communities and caring about their spiritual welfare. And it's just been important part of our service. So Some of you may not have heard this, but the average age in Fort Collins is 30 years old. Kind of ridiculous. It is a college town, so that explains much of it. All right, we're going to go to Naya Day now.
Oh, Chris.
All right, I'm going to play Joya Joya.
Wait, before you start, wait. How old are you, Naya Day?
12.
Okay, and where do you live?
I live in Hawaii on the Kona side of the island.
Oh, sweet. And do you want to share anything about life there? What do you love about living over there?
It's not very rainy, even though sometimes you do kind of miss it. But yeah, it's not too rainy. And also it's sunny a lot, so not too cloudy usually.
Awesome.
And it's really warm. Joya, 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 sempre nuova gioia. 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 Joya,